I guess we would put this under the heading of science and technology. Am I even pointing my camera? Yep, I am. Okay, good. Ah, man, not enough headroom here. You gotta do it right. We'll make some minor adjustment, why don't we? There we go. I'm kind of ironing up some loose ends, testing out the ability to stream. Basically, there are two options for streaming. You can, basically stream directly from your webcam to YouTube, or there's many options. You can use Streamlab, which works pretty well. And another option is, of course, streaming directly from, or using an application like OBS as your local encoder, or using whatever video encoder OBS utilizes, and then sending it over to YouTube. So you would open up OBS, set it up a certain way, and then you would, go to YouTube and tell YouTube I'm streaming from OBS, and that works. But apparently there's a much easier option. OBS has this really cool feature, which kind of hate doing this, but I think it's worth demonstrating it. Where did I put this? Here it is. Right here it says start virtual web camera or virtual camera, and I don't think a lot of people like this feature last year, but it appears that there has been a lot of improvement. For example, if you are participating in a live stream or Zoom meeting or Skype meeting, instead of telling Skype to use your webcam, you would open up OBS first and set up OBS however you see fit, like by supplying OBS with your webcam. So I got my webcam, my secondary monitor, my main display, my Nintendo, and now basically once you enable virtual web camera, instead of selecting your webcam, you open up Skype or Streamlab and you tell Streamlab or Skype, use the OBS virtual web camera as my webcam, and then essentially what you see in this box up here is what your what your people will see on the webcam. So you could essentially engage in screen sharing without going into full-blown screen sharing, without actually using screen sharing. And this might sometimes be pointless, but I don't know, I see some potential here. But let's get on topic. Okay, so we have a couple of Nintendo 64s here, and we want to determine which one we can easily apply the RGB modification to. And so I've gone ahead, I've plugged in a secondary webcam, and I will probably tell the Logitech software to utilize manual focus. Whoops, wrong camera. Let's see here. Okay, let's see if we can get this right here. We got some letters here. Okay, that will probably be acceptable. Okay, so anyway, that's just a set of Nintendo screwdrivers, and we're gonna start by removing our empty jumper pack, which, yes, I do have a upgraded memory expansion. In fact, where did I put it? I brought it upstairs. It's here somewhere. Oh, I gotta remove this label. I wish I had some isopropyl alcohol on me right now. That comes off quite nicely. Okay, so let's go ahead and nice and firmly installed. if you own an old Dell desktop, this jumper pack is basically the same thing as an RDRAM continuity module. I mean, other computers had RDRAM, but Dell was really big on using it for a moment. And so we actually don't have to take this apart yet. Our number one priority is to... Whoops. Sorry for the vertigo. Is that we are to utilize that information. So let's get the microscope on. Make it easier to read. Oh, this is gonna be fun. I bet you it's upside down. Oh good, it's not upside down. Well, it's upside down from my perspective, but not others. Okay, so we got... Not that, you know, this definitely does not call for a actual microscope yet. If anything, we're gonna need to look at some, you know, microchips or some silk screen labeling, but it's a early model and my serial number is in the 183 millions. So what do you do when you want to do a RGB mod? Well, you would go to a website like this one, and you know, you might try to purchase a device that would enable you to do the RGB modification. And this is an example of what you would get if you successfully apply this modification. Yep, there it is. Okay. So what we do here is, I think I'm overlooking something. Nope, that was correct. Okay. So essentially, you know, whether you're using a CRT or an LCD display, your color output will be less pure. And so there's a introduction to RGB, which is, you know, abbreviation for red, green, blue. And basically it says right here, simply said, RGB is the best video output. Oh, I'm not recording. Okay, now I'm recording because I don't know if this stream is going to be successful, but I think I'm going to re-upload this later. So from the top, we want to take a Nintendo 64. We want to identify if this model number of Nintendo 64 and if its respective serial number is able to be easily modified, or, you know, if it will be easy to apply the RGB mod. And this is because we want to go from this to this, in theory, regardless of it, whether we're using a CRT or a, you know, LCD, whatever, LED, OLED, whatever TV you want. Simply said, this is the best possible video output you can get from a classic game console. And in fact, if you have a Super Nintendo, that has RGB output. So, for example, these guys are talking about what they call SCART cables. And there it is. It looks kind of complex, kind of big and ugly. This would be on certain TVs, apparently. Most notably, those professional Sony CRTs. Yeah. That sometimes will contain one of these plugs on the back. And then obviously this is the Nintendo 64 socket, or jack, whatever we call it. And Super Nintendo had this built in inherently, but it was so unused that when Nintendo rolled out their Nintendo 64s, they had the ability to offer this, but they decided not to wire it up. So on the most simple level, it became possible to do very simple installations, like absurdly simple, where you're basically just running 3 wires. You know, you got some videos here, and essentially once you identify whether your Nintendo 64 is able to support this feature, you run like 3 wires. And over here, apparently, we got BRG or BGR. So On the Nintendo 64 motherboard, if you got the right version, you'll be able to literally run a wire from underneath a certain chip or somewhere on the bottom of the circuit board, or in this case on top of it. And apparently this corresponds to these things over here. Here's an example of what happens if you feed the cables in too far. So essentially I think they're showing if you screw up, you can cause a short circuit. So you got to be careful, or you might melt something, like you might literally cause the legs from the microchip to come off, I guess. But bottom line, this is the simple version. You put this little thingamajig on the back, you run your 3 wires, and from what I can figure, you basically test it. However, there's other scenarios, there's all kinds of intricacies, especially if you have a later model Nintendo 64. The soldering joints might be different. There's this thing called C-Sync. I guess that's color sync. For boards that process the Nintendo 64's own sync, you'll need to remove these resistors R15 and R16. So there it is. You don't need to know what I'm talking about. I barely do. But essentially, there's a process where you're just running some wires and adding a little thing that you can order, a little component that you can order online, and you're more or less good to go. And then there's another scenario where you gotta remove some pieces, these little ceramic rectangles that are tiny. You gotta, basically heat them up, yank them off the board with a pair of tweezers, and then proceed with the rest of the installation work. And so that one appears to be a little more complex. And in this example, even this component here that you're mounting to the corner of the board looks a little more complex. But in the end, oh, and then here's one more key thing here. So this little thing is an amplifier. So essentially you can just run if you're, depending on your model N64, you can essentially run the red, green, and blue lines to the back, get a special cable that supports the RGB output, and hook it up to a supporting TV, such as one of those CRTs with the SCART inputs or RGB inputs. And without the amplifier, it'll be too dim. So you install this circuit board that is an amplifier, and you're good to go. But of course, all of this seems rather prohibitive. Most notably, the idea of having to use SCART cables. I don't think, I was like, once I realized I needed to buy a special TV, I was like, get out of town. Not having it. But of course, I always thought, well, can I hook up a VGA cable? VGA cables have RGB signals. Can I hook it up to component cables? Those 720p component cables with the RGB. I mean, that's got RGB going on, sort of. Maybe there needs to be an adapter. But now we're at a level of technology because of all of these HDMI upscalers, where you can buy a device like this, and you got an HDMI port. You got this switch here that will, basically do some smoothing to take away jagged edges. Some people may not prefer that. So you can turn it on and off, which I like. I always like anything that gives more control. And in this photo, you can clearly see that it's hooked up directly to a Super Nintendo. So in fact, you can buy this cable for your Super Nintendo today. And from what I understand, without additional modification, it should work. It should just work. But for N64, which I believe has the same connection, you need to do a little bit of work, but depending on your model N64, you can do more or less work. So right off the bat, instead of looking into the model number, it looks like right here, all I got to do is identify the, whatchamacallit, that number on the motherboard, which is obviously right on top of the cartridge slot. So if you give me one moment, we're going to do a little on-the-fly setup here. I'm not sure how I'm going to do this yet, but I think what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate the scene, and we're going to tell OBS to make the website cropped because we don't need to see this whole website. So if you forgive the muss for just one moment, I'm going to make a little bit of a muss, and we're going to obviously borrow from or plagiarize or follow along with these very nice instructions. You know, definitely want to give credit where credit is due. And so actually we're just gonna go shrink this. We can always go back to here if we need to see the detail. But obviously these websites are not my website. These are made by very good people, trailblazers, and I want to thank these very wonderful people for their diligent work. Alrighty, let's see, we're gonna shuffle this over to our left just a tiny bit, and we're gonna take my secondary webcam. How do we want to do this? Yeah, see, like I said, this is a test stream, you know, we're just kind of tinkering here while killing two birds with one stone. So perhaps for now we will do this. And then we will put, whoops. There we go. So we have a little picture. That's our reference image. And now we are going to shuffle over to get the imagery from our microscope. And this one we're going to kind of, whoops, did I just do that? Did I do that? Anyone watch, anyone remember Steve Urkel? Alrighty, there we go. So for this one, we're just gonna shrink it up. If anything, we'll, I guess we'll just use it if we need to use it, you know? For now, I'm gonna turn this off, and we can always activate it later. Alright, let's proceed. So first, let's see if I have the right screwdriver. Oh, that one does, oh, okay, that's got some grip. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Don't strip it. Alrighty. Now, I have two Nintendo 64s. This one here, I retrieved from the recycling heap back when I worked at a retail job, because we used to dispose of e-waste, and if I saw a game console, I said, screw it, I'm not letting this go into the trash heap. It's not like it contains any private information. So I went ahead and I would retrieve it at risk of my employment, because I don't think the this is really, you know, I don't think the rules actually allowed for this. I think it's actually quite against the rules, but it was one of these, like, you know, gray areas, you know, like if a manager saw you doing this and they wanted to be a dick about it, oh, pardon my language, if they didn't, you know, appreciate that, yeah, then they would give you an issue. Or if there was a visitor from corporate visiting your store, then you would probably want to, you know, not be so obvious. In general, you always want to have discretion. You don't want to be mad obvious that you're hoarding and, I mean, that you're looting the recycling heap. Because depending on what is being recycled, there's like an agreement, there's some money being changed hands, and I mean, depends, like batteries, I'm pretty sure cost money to recycle. And CRT TVs, it got to the point where they would tell people $25 to recycle the TV, and part of that was because you know, the company wanted to show that they're being responsible and all this stuff. Like, oh, look, we sell you all of these electronics, so we're going to make it easy for you to dispose of them. But at the same time, a CRT TV is expensive to dispose of. See, it's not really just about the, you know, TV itself being, you know, processed somewhere else or being shipped. Well, it sort of is, because look, an employee in the store has to lift that TV and put it into a cart. And oh, bummer. I don't think I have my Phillips head screwdriver here. So yeah, like somebody could go and lift up a big TV and break their back. And then, of course, they would get workers' comp, and it cost the company a bunch of money. So, although they didn't explicitly say that this $25 fee goes towards all of this, it's my speculation that they probably rather get $25 per TV, maybe accumulate it into a general fund, and then, you know, if people make a workers' comp claim, they, you know, can sort of offset their costs or something. My other theory is, you know, I like making up theories for things that I have no control over, is that it was just to help discourage people, limit the amount of people who were simultaneously recycling TVs, so that, you know, people would say, ah, screw it, I'll do it and I'll go somewhere else. And in fact, that was an option. You know, the local sanitation department allowed people to bring TVs to a garage. Oh gosh, yeah, I need a larger screwdriver. I will strip a screw if I use this little bitty one. So yeah, this screwdriver set, this Nintendo set, comes with everything you need except for a Nintendo screwdriver. I mean, a Phillips head. But getting back on topic, yeah, so, you know, some e-waste, they melt them down, and they take the copper and gold out of this stuff, they send it to China, they get money per pound or something. There's different arrangements, different scenarios. Oh, good, I don't have to take it apart anymore. I found what I was looking for, so, okay. So this one says Nintendo US CPU '04. Ah, bummer. Okay, so guess we're gonna have to take apart the other Nintendo 64, because this one does not match 03. You know, like because I want to do the basic RGB mod. If I can avoid making this more complex than it needs to be, I want to do it the easiest way possible. Okay, can we see the board from here? Nah, the plastic blocks it. Okay, so we're gonna have to, for now, I'm gonna reassemble, and then we'll return in another stream, I guess, because I need to get dinner. But yeah, you know, I mean, it's a small little motherboard. Well, not too big, just a little heat sink, or a large heat sink, passive cooling, and you know, so it's not too complex. There's a lot of empty spaces along the edges. But now my Nintendo 64 was a lower number, so serial number, whoops, pardon me, that number here. Okay, so this says 183. Mine is like 134 or something like that. So it is my hope that the Nintendo with the lower number will be more readily modifiable or upgradable. We're not even really, I mean, yeah, it's a modification, but we're not modding it to do anything wrong. We're literally doing an upgrade here. We're making it a better machine. Now, I'm kind of guessing where these screws go. I'm not really, you know, I'm kind of just rolling with it. I don't even know if I'm using the right screwdriver. I'm just going to try them all. Oh, yeah, that one fits better. Actually, no, that one's not even going into a hole. Oh, that sucks. It's kind of stuck. Okay, good, good, good. There we go. We're gonna go. There we go. There we go. Yep. Now I got a positive lock here. Going into the threaded slot. But essentially all we gotta do if we want to do this mod is, from what I can figure, one of the early steps is to just inspect and check if you're using a, you know, if the motherboard has revision 03 or CPU NUS-CPU-03, and if it's got 03, we're good. In fact, I'll read aloud what it says here on the website, and I quote, Okay, and I quote, it says, getting, whoops, let me make sure I find, okay, it says over here, getting basic C-Sync directly from the N64. No, wait, forget that. This gets complicated. I really suggest you just use the cables above. Okay, wait. So, why is there a colon over here? Okay, so apparently there's something about color sync, and if you get the cables, this guy recommends, it's all fine and dandy. So, what I would want is, see, I don't really want an RGB SCART cable. I want, here we go, universal cables. Yeah, I want one of these. I want like that Super Nintendo cable we looked at earlier. Yeah, this would be phenomenal. I would be a happy camper with, you know, a little dongle that has an HDMI port built into it. This would be paradise. Or this would be wonderful. So I would prefer that. I don't want the SCART cable, but it says multi-out. Yeah, no thank you. I don't like it. And Retrovision, HD Retrovision, this looks okay too. Yeah, I can live with this because I have a component to HDMI upscaler, although it is out of stock right now. I think that's a New Jersey company because they got a 201 area code. Or wait, I don't know. Oh, I don't know. Well, whatever. Whoops. But I'm sure, you know, I could look on eBay, I could look elsewhere, no big deal. But as you can see, that's an option. And anyway, getting back on topic, it says right here, basic RGB mods. If you've installed a, quote, basic RGB mod that only connects 3 wires, oh wait, I should really read the whole thing before I recommend anything to anyone, huh? That connects just 3 wires, and you have the motherboard revision CPU 01, 02, and some 03s. So not all 03s, only some. They might actually have C-Sync, but not RGB already connected to pin number 3, comma, parentheses C-Sync, on the multi-out, not PAL. Okay, not PAL, C-Sync instead of PAL. I guess they're distinct. If you have one of those board revisions, you'll most likely be able to just purchase the RGB cable that gets sync from this C-Sync pin without doing anything else. For later revision boards, check out the mod relevant to your console for more information. Okay, we're going to click on that in a moment. For more information on which serial numbers have each motherboard. Okay, this is, now we're cooking here. So what we're going to do is we're going to just, whoops. I kind of want to keep those tabs open, but I want to get them out of the way. Oh good, this actually will be very good information here. Well, anywho. So, like, let's check here. Relevant to your console. And I think we're gonna, like I said, this is a test stream here. We're gonna probably go over this again in a more concise manner. Before starting the mod, make sure your N64, I don't even know if anybody's chatting. Nah, nobody's chatting. Okay, make sure your N64 can be modded for RGB and that this is the correct mod for your system. Retro RGB, N64 compatible, blah blah blah. If your system is N64 with NTSC, the proper VUC chip. Okay, if your system is an NTSC model with the proper VDC-NUS chip, you can proceed. Every N64 can output RGB using a more complicated RGB kit, which is generally more expensive and harder to install but offer extra features. Cool. Tim Worthington sells this kit. I think the website is down. It looks like it's trying to load. Oh, there we go. So I bet you this is like only 55 bucks in Australian dollars, probably $40 shipping. But this is cool. You know, you got this complicated looking flat thing you soldered to the pinouts, like very flatly, very bizarre looking, but you know, it's kind of cool. You got some generic ribbons. I hope this, I have a feeling that you have to buy the ribbon cables yourself. Oh good, it comes with the cable. Okay. Solder inboard, RGB support to N64, works on all models, compatible with all Nintendo, Super Nintendo and GameCube RGB cables. Some of the later models of N64 have a fine pitch DAC chip, so meaning that you need an extra adapter because the pins are a little bit tighter. Installation instructions were just clicked upon. And this product is also available from a United States distributor, if it's still in stock. And it's like about, that's weird. It just went back in circles. Yeah, I clicked USA distributor, and I guess you're still paying $70. Okay, whatever. And you solder it right on top of that heatsink that we looked at earlier. You run some wires, and honestly, I mean, this is like what I'm talking about, progress right here. I mean, if this works in every unit, I don't care if it's more complex. It doesn't look too bad to install. I mean, not everyone's going to be comfortable with this, especially if you don't have two separate Nintendo 64s, but I mean, I'd be willing to do this if that's what it is, you know. I mean, as long as everything's in stock and I can order it and it's compatible, I'm a happy camper. See, I can make things more complicated by looking for something that's simpler to install, only to discover it's not in stock. But you know, you gotta keep your options open. Okay, yeah, so you start off with the kit, wires and a board and your own soldering iron. You open it up just like we did. Then you get a proper screwdriver, or apparently you don't need one. You're not removing the heatsink, you're removing these bolts. And that's it. So in conclusion, we're gonna pick up from where we left off soon, but essentially you're soldering things underneath a microchip. You got like some clear labels over here. You got a diagram that tells you what connects to what. The different adapter if you have a model number like this. And so we'll basically before the next video, and I'll try to get everything organized so that we can go over a scenario how we identify this and match up, to find out if I need this or that. Am I just running wires or am I installing this adapter thing here? But as you can see, you put this adapter flat on the circuit board, then you connect your ribbon cable. So I think what's happening is, okay, this makes some sense here. What is happening is you're soldering these pins on the chip to this little mini board. Then this makes things easier because now you could solder the wires without busting your butt. And I think what it's doing is it's also kind of like, yeah, it's just making it easier. I think it's kind of putting some things in a different order. It's maybe grounding things out or running the voltages on common lines so you don't have as many individual pins to mess around with. This one here apparently is running underneath because it's a ground. So bottom line is it looks like it makes it easier. And then, I guess you can always reorder one of these if you screw up, but it's kind of hard to screw up when you have such wide soldering points. Although soldering isn't something that's easy to do for the first time. It's like you kind of like learn, and I could share some tips, I guess. But here we are, different chip. Apparently when you have a different chip, you're stripping it a little differently. Yeah, here we are. So in this example, the guy is just soldering it directly instead of using an adapter. Then the wire is going from the microchip leg to the adapter board, and then the adapter board has this information, blah blah blah, blue, green, red, ground, composite sync, TTL, composite sync 75 ohm, whatever this means. And then on the back of the Nintendo 64, where you plug your video cables in, your AV cable, this is actually telling us green, blue, ground, video. Now it's a good time to test it before putting it back together. I agree. And then ultimately you can get some tape adhesive strip, put it on the bottom of the board. And apparently this is telling you to attach a piece of wire to a screw in order to ground it out. Yeah, I guess that's what it's saying, but not too difficult. We're just gonna, and now we know that I should be able to stream. I mean, for all I know, this stream came out really bad, so I'm gonna review it, see if the transition effects actually worked. For all we know, this whole thing could be blurry and pixelated. And I guess I could check, but I don't know, can I watch my own stream? Let us see here. I could probably switch my YouTube account, and then I would go and look up my channel. Lower my volume. Yeah, okay, so let's see. Look, I'm on TV! Okay. Let's see what happens when I scroll. There's like a couple of second delay. Yeah. There we go. See, it gets blurry. So, I could do some experimenting, but it may or may not be better to use the OBS virtual camera. Or I could just adjust my settings so that I'm using a higher bit rate for streaming. You know, you try to strike a balance between quality and, you know, resource usage, bandwidth consumption. But in conclusion, that's just kind of like what we need to do, is we need to check the board revision for the Nintendo 64 by opening the bottom, so we can look at the top of the board above the cartridge slot and look at the number over there. And also, just while you're following these instructions will tell you what you need to check in order to be, you know, certain what, you know, what is required to mod your specific Nintendo. But when everything is said and done, we should have either the ability, in fact, yeah, we would have the ability to plug a HDMI dongle, a special HDMI dongle, into the back of the N64, and not just any dongle. See, you could buy a upscaler that would take the regular composite RCA cable, old school video signal, and upscale it, but it's kind of interpolating the image. It is not using the best possible image. It's still a step up from the you know, standard AV cable, but this here will, you know, deliver the red, green, and blue channels of color through separate signal wires, and this will enable the you know, N64 to you know, deliver the cleanest possible signal to the HDMI adapter, so that you will have a truly clean digital signal. I don't know, I mean, I'm overstating it, but essentially, yeah, this is the way to do it. If you want the best possible picture, this is how you do it. And, you know, I would like to stream from my N64. I mean, I already, you know, done some recordings, but I definitely see that the quality suffers, and one of the workarounds is to play the game through an emulator. But N64 games are notoriously not good at running in emulators. Like, some games, everything works. Mario 64 is one of them. Other games, you get partial functionality, and in some games you'll read the list and you'll find that there's just entire parts of the game that don't work. Some games you'll turn it on, the menu will be blank, you'll have to hit the start button and guess your way around, and then the rest of the game will work. Most games have sound issues. Star Fox 64 is one of the better compatible games for running an emulator, but the way certain colors, the way the water looks when it's being rendered is different. Just for some reason, the rendering is different. But performance, sound, and, you know, latency is all very, very good, practically perfect. But you really can't emulate N64 unless you're using genuine hardware. And there's a number of ways of going about doing this, but essentially just having the machine is the way to go. I mean, some people, they literally take apart an N64 and butcher it in order to make a miniature N64. You know, and I mean, of course, if you have, you know, virtual console through Nintendo, yeah, sure, you know, whatever they call it now, that works quite great on a Nintendo Switch if you want to pay $35 a year for that. But even doing it that way, you don't get every game. And once in a while, I'll see them say, oh, we added this game to the online collection. I'm like, that's cool. And you know what? It probably takes some labor and work. It might actually be worth $35 for a lot of people, because there's no way to play N64 games that are currently available, not all of them at least, on non-genuine N64 hardware. So Nintendo is actually going through the effort to make a separate emulator, or it's the same emulator, but they're essentially making adjustments for each game. So it's almost like the old Xbox. There was an N64 emulator that you would open up, and it would have a list already preloaded, where if you open up a certain game, it would say, we're going to run it through this emulator. And essentially, there would be one emulator, but there would be 3 emulators that it would actually utilize. And it would use Ultra HLE, or Project 64, or I think there was another one called 1964. And some games performed a little better in one emulator or the other, and so by default, based on this preloaded list, it would tell you, hey, I'm going to run this game in this emulator for you. And, you know, maybe if you found it a way to change your settings for the other emulator and make it work under that one, you could change the default setting so that when you open up your game, it'll follow your adjustments. You could tweak it and make it work differently or better. But you know, aside from that, if you want to play every N64 game that you currently have in your library of cartridges, some of those cartridges, even if you could download the ROM, even if you legally copied the cartridge to your computer, you're not going to get the same experience. So yeah, I think that it is my duty to do this if I'm going to give y'all a good experience on the visual. So with that, well, let's see, I mean, blah blah blah. Let me scroll up and down again. I want to see, like, you know, essentially the quality on streaming turns to crap when you do this. And so we're going to make some adjustments, and next time I do this, we're going to have better quality. And then in the end, I'll probably just end up using OBS's virtual webcam. Unless there's something I don't know about YouTube's built-in streaming feature that just stinks. You know, and obviously if I'm doing with multiple people, which I have yet to do on my own channel, then yeah, I would probably explore using something like Streamlab. But even then, I tested out OBS virtual camera on Streamlab, and it works pretty well. So yeah, but thank you for watching, thank you for joining this test, and maybe I'll make this an unlisted video because of the quality. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2